All right, so we are into week 7. So today's focus will be on owning your successes. Or just owning your success, however you want to describe it. Basically, we'll be covering visualizing success, building trust in yourself, kind of owning your success without being narcissistic, dealing with haters, and then we'll cover briefly just Arnold's secrets to success. If you haven't heard that, I will post that in the group later, so you can kind of get the full transcript on that one. All right, so I was telling us earlier that I was reading Bo Eason's book. I actually listened to Bo Eason at a conference. He did this small kind of conference, and he was giving us a lecture on just his experience in the NFL, and then he moved into performance art as a playwright and actor, and then now he's doing kind of speak coaching as well. So he's really big in the kind of personal development space for public speaking. But he started as a professional athlete in the Houston Oilers, and then he was traded to the 49ers, and he got to play with Jerry Rice. So hopefully you guys have heard of Jerry Rice. Obviously big 49er wide receiver, known as one of the greatest receivers and maybe arguably one of the greatest football players of all time. So Bo Eason had this ritual where he would kind of get in and practice really early for his football games, right? He said he'd get to the stadium like 2 hours early before the game, try to be the first one there, and just start doing his warm-up drills. And this is kind of part of his ethos of being kind of a player and a champion, is kind of, showing up early, getting ready for that performance, and then like really putting your best foot forward. But one of the keys there is giving yourself that prep time so that by the time even the other players showed up, hey, I've been warmed up for 2 hours, this isn't even close, right? So he says when he got traded to the 49ers, his first time kind of training with Jerry Rice for an actual game, he gets to the stadium, 2 hours early, and he's like, all right, I'm the first one here. He suits up and he steps onto the field, and Jerry Rice had already been there for an hour, was already working out. So Jerry Rice had been there 3 hours before the game, and Bo Eason always prided himself on being like the hardest worker in the room, and Jerry Rice basically outworked him. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what we're talking about when it comes to like putting in the work and kind of visualizing that success. But one of the things that Bo Eason really stresses is visualizing your success and kind of coming up with a really long-term plan. His kind of training is about, he calls it the 20-year plan. So he started with an idea when he was like 6, like I'm going to play in the NFL, and he like wrote it on a crayon like in his room and like just posted it on his wall. And he always thought about, okay, what do I need to do in order to become the best safety in the NFL, right? And he had this story of having this picture of like Walter Payton in his locker room as he was training, and then when he got to the NFL, he got to tackle Walter Payton, and it's the exact same image that he was looking at because he was visualizing that. So one of the tricks with visualization is you got to really start kind of breaking it down into these tips. So when we're talking about kind of visualizing your success, one of the first things is you have to start talking to yourself, obviously, so kind of pep talks and that positive self-talk, right? Kind of imagining that future self and that aspects that you want to achieve, and just keep building that up in your head, but you want to keep it in a positive frame, but keeping that aspirational aspect of it as well as kind of that motivational aspect, so you get excited about it every time you think of it. Another aspect of kind of visualizing your success is just imagine your goals from your perspective. Think of yourself as kind of like that hero in a movie where you're like the main character. What is the main character going to do, right? Are you just going to sleep in, snooze, or are you going to get up and start attacking the day, chasing after your dreams, right? Like that's really what it comes down to. It's that daily action and that habit, just constantly taking those actions. But it starts with that idea of what your version of success looks like and kind of really deep dive into that. Also, when you're visualizing things, you really want to be really detailed. I think this is the part that people leave out. They're like, oh, I just want to achieve X, Y, and Z, or I just want to make it to this point. But they don't really deep dive into that in terms of what it feels like, what it looks like. Imagine walking into that new life that you have. What are the people in your life like? What does it feel like? What does it look like? What does it smell like? Like everything about it will help you start really getting excited about that vision and start moving towards that. The more detailed you can be, the easier it is for you to step into that and work towards it. And also, we've kind of talked about this for a little bit, but kind of the idea of chunking, right? Chunking down your your longer and shorter term goals so that you can achieve what you're trying to set out to. And I think one of the bigger things here is celebrating those small successes as you're making your way on to the big term successes, right? So what does that like 3-month plan look like when you're thinking about what success looks like in your life? What is that 1-year plan? And then, once you get kind of that going, you can kind of extrapolate that out 5 and 10 years. But really what you really want to focus on is when you're talking about achieving any type of success, it really comes down to just 3 steps, and it's practicing to perform, performing, and then recovering for performance. If you're not doing any of those 3 things, you're probably not moving in the right direction, right? And that performance can be what is moving you into that direction of success. But think of it, if you're Bo Eason training for being the best safety in the NFL, what you're doing, you're practicing, you're doing the game, and then you're recovering from the game. That's the only 3 things you're doing for 20 years. That's really what you're focusing on. And it's really that simple, and you start cutting things out from that, and then things start to become a lot more clear after that point. All right, so we talked about a little bit about this, but in order to really visualize success, you have to kind of start surrounding yourself with people and things that you want in that version of your life. So I'll just kind of read you the quote here, but I want you to surround yourself with who you want to be your future self. The most successful people in the world are the ones who have the best and the most intimate relationships with their future selves. If you can't see yourself in the future and who you want to be and where you want to go, you're going to have a tough time getting there. So it's really attracting that version of you by surrounding yourself with the best possible way to get to that future version of what you want to achieve, right? So think of it as, you're kind of the accumulation of the 5 people that you spend the most time around, essentially. Right? So you got to be really careful with the people in your lives that are either, bringing you down or lifting you up. Right? And that kind of brings you back to this idea of, the play like a champion type of sign that I think it's in the Notre Dame locker room. But Bo Eason speaks about this in the NFL, where he's saying that there's a sign in the locker room that says only players beyond this point. So he wants you to be kind of that player in the game. You want to actually take those steps in life to move forward, or are you just going to sit on the sidelines and be that fan watching your life go by? Right? All right, so what makes the visualizing so successful is you have to start by actually believing in yourself. If you don't trust in your own ability to figure things out, it's going to be very tough for you to even start moving in that direction, right? So in order to build trust in yourself, I think one of the bigger things is you have to kind of ask yourself who you want to be and what do you want to accomplish, right? And that kind of comes down to stepping away from that influence that maybe you grew up with and really getting down to what you really want. Week 1 we talked about kind of those beliefs and that mindset, and that's a really big piece of it. Are some of those beliefs and is that mindset really serving you? Are you moving in that direction that you want to, or are you just kind of living the life that someone has told you? Right? That's something that you got to kind of figure out for yourself, and that's going to be different for every person. Right? Kind of talked a little bit about this, but just kind of setting small goals on the way to bigger ones that helps build that momentum, and also just celebrating those small successes as you're going through. Just building that confidence is going to happen when you're starting to do things right, and you're going to notice, okay, this is I'm kind of in the right direction, and you're going to have to course correct as you go. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, positive self-talk is a huge thing. Just kind of know that failure is a necessary part of success, and just when you're trying to move in the direction of success, you're going to have a lot of failures, but it's how fast you bounce back from that and what you learn from it, and that perspective of, okay, this is part of the learning process, I'm going to fail, but how close am I getting to achieving success, right? Am I moving in a step direction? Am I failing forward? Am I learning from this failure? What can I do to improve? And just kind of course correcting, because a lot of this journey is going to be about course correcting as you make your way through on this process. Step number 4 is kind of building on your strength. This is one of the things people kind of forget. They're like, oh, I need to work on my weaknesses, right? And this is one of the bigger things is what I've found and what I've also heard from a lot of people kind of at the top of their game is that they kind of just forget about their weaknesses because there's no point in working on your weaknesses because you can outsource it at a certain point. So just do it enough that you can get through it, but really focus on your strengths, because your strengths are what's going to lift you forward. What's going to create more of that self-confidence to keep doing things that you suck at. You're probably going to get discouraged and you're not going to be able to develop any type of mastery on that. You're just going to basically even out and get to like, all right, cool, now I'm like all right at this thing. but you're never going to be a master at that thing if you're already bad at it. So really focus on the things that you're kind of already good at, and really go into that level of mastery by really working towards developing that skill set. Because when you think about it, if you have an inclination for drawing and you keep working on writing, it's like it's not really aligned with what you're working on. So just think of really going all in on your strengths, and then as you get better at things, you can always outsource the things you're not great at. And that comes back to self-awareness, right? You got to think about, okay, what am I working towards? Getting used to spending that time alone, so you're not constantly being influenced by other people, and just figuring out, okay, where are my skill sets and what is best for me to do. After that is, obviously this is the one that is paramount when it comes to trusting yourself. You have to be decisive, right? People will make decisions and they'll kind of backtrack, and then they won't learn from that. When you make a decision, just make it and then learn from whatever happens, however, and whatever is the outcome, right? I think a lot of times when people are making those decisions, they kind of second guess themselves, and that kind of creates that seed of doubt, and you want to create those habits that are moving you in the right direction, right? So when you make a decision, just see it through to that end, and then, learn from it either way, whatever happens. So now we're kind of into that next part, which is when you do achieve that level of success, and this is the harder part, you're going to see a lot more attention. You're going to kind of start getting a lot more praise from a lot of people, and it's a lot of times, especially in the media, we kind of see how people respond to that, and this is where kind of people either start creating a big following, or they kind of start alienating themselves. So that's kind of being successful without being narcissistic, right? So one of the bigger things is kind of emphasizing the work that you've done. I think as long as you focus on the work and just frame it for the accomplishments, that's something that people can't take away from you, and that's something that you've actually done, right? So just really keep your eye on what you've accomplished and what you've created in your life. One of the other things is you got to lift others up. I think this one is a big thing. I think a lot of people, when they get to a certain level, they start just focusing on what people can't do. And you really want to think about kind of that rising tide lifts all ships, right? Your goal is really to lift others up and to really kind of create a better environment than when you stepped into it, right? And that's one of the bigger things, is as you reach those levels of successes, that's going to be more and more a focus as you get to higher levels of success. Is you're going to be kind of held to a higher standard. Whatever got you there isn't going to get you that next step, but you have to step into that new version of yourself and constantly improve. So the next one is kind of just giving credit where it's due. Oftentimes there's a team behind you. There's a lot of people supporting you in that process. It's not just a lone ranger type of scenario. You always have a support network, and everybody who's gotten to a certain level has that level of support behind them. So just keeping that in mind as you're going through, it kind of takes a village to build that level of success that you want in your life, and also start looking for that as you're going through. Just finding those people that can be that kind of support network for you as you're going through. And then also, as you're talking about kind of any type of success that you have, just kind of focusing on, again, what you've accomplished, sticking to the facts, and trying not to add any type of extra judgments on top of it, because then it becomes a little bit narcissistic when you're like, oh, I'm the greatest person here. It's like, okay. Really focus on what you've done, and try not to add anything extra to it. That's going to just allow people to really connect with you a little bit more. Also, just being grateful for what you have, thankful for the opportunities that you have. A lot of times success is about just recognizing opportunities and realizing that, okay, you have that opportunity, and just taking advantage of what you have, and then just making that decision. Oftentimes, a lot of people have the same opportunities, they just don't take that step forward. So just know that, it comes down to that self-awareness, and just be grateful for your understanding of this process. Also, just like we were talking about, kind of don't add the qualifiers. Think about it as, if you are going to do that, make it more of a positive framework, like, I'm more excited about, I'm honored to be a part of, making it more of like gratitude for the people around you and the things that you've accomplished, so that it's not just focusing on just you, right? And then obviously one of the more common things is, avoid any type of bragging. You want to aim for sincerity. I think that's the bigger thing, is really connection, and sincerity is the bigger focus on this one. Like what you've accomplished, what you're trying to accomplish, and just making it about what you're creating. So takeaway here is that you really want to focus on sincerity, connection, and contribution. Arnold in his Six Secrets of Success, which we'll talk about later, he talks about just kind of giving back. And that's one of the bigger things, is when you get to that level of success, you really want to start giving back to your community, to your state, to your country. Anything that's going to help you elevate the lives of others, that's going to kind of help you frame that level of success and realize that when you do reach levels of success, it's no longer really about you, it's about what you're contributing to your community, what you're giving back, how you're helping others. Because if you're just in it for yourself, you're going to see that it's going to be a lot different path than if you're in it for a lot of other people. Right? You have to have a larger vision for what you're trying to create here. All right, so when you do get to levels of success, in addition to learning how to handle the extra attention, you're going to accumulate a lot of people who are going to try to cut you down. This is just the reality of life. Some people just do not handle others' success well. So obviously we call them haters, but they're going to try to bring you down. They're going to try to discourage you from your dreams, and it's because your life is now becoming a reflection of their bad decisions, and it's making them look bad, right? So you have to kind of frame this better so you can handle these people in a more positive way, because how you handle those people is also going to be a reflection of your, the path that you're on as well. You have to elevate yourself, and dealing with these people is going to be the next challenge when you get to that next level. So one of them is handling criticism. This is one of the bigger things. I think learning how to do this takes a while, but it's something you want to constantly work on. And just thinking about framing it, is it constructive feedback or is it destructive feedback? Are they trying to cut you down? Are they just the bucket of crabs where they don't want you to elevate to that next level? Okay, then you can just dismiss that, ignore that, move on, don't even engage with it. But if they're saying something and there's a pattern there, and they're trying to be constructive, but it's delivered in a horrible way, you can take that as, okay, I need to look at this, I need to reflect on this and figure out, okay, what are they really trying to say here? What can I learn from this, right? That's one of the harder things, I think, is learning how to handle that criticism. Even if it's positive, it still is rough to hear. But learning how to receive that, and just realizing that, in this process, you're going to be constantly failing. You're going to learn from your failures, and you're ultimately going to have to improve at some point. The next part is kind of getting out of your head. You got to stop focusing on the opinions of others, and this is they kind of go hand in hand, but just kind of learning with that framework of that positive, constructive feedback. But don't give others kind of the power to completely ruin your trajectory for success. You want to still keep that vision in mind as you're going through this, and you want to not allow them to completely detract you from your journey. A lot of times people will hear something and they just get so wrapped up in the opinions of others that they just get completely off course and they get kind of downward spiral. So try not to let them completely destroy your thought and your mindset as you're going through this. We talked about a little bit of that emotional and mental maturity before last week. Just kind of going back to that as we talk about this part. And then another big thing is, as you're going through this, whatever you've done in the past is not necessarily where you're going in the future. So you have to think about it as, don't try to live too much in your past mistakes, because ultimately they've already happened and you've got to move forward, right? A lot of times I call them pastors, but they stay so much in the past where they can't move into the future. And this is pretty destructive for relationships as well. If you just keep focusing on the past, you're not going to be able to create a future with somebody, right? So think of this as kind of the relationship with yourself. Don't try to focus so much on the future. Try to focus on what you're doing now and how you're creating and moving into the future. Also, just developing thicker skin. This is one of the tougher ones, but just kind of trusting in yourself, and then not caring so much about what others want for you and what you want for yourself. You got to figure out what you want and use maybe that fuel as kind of fire to your creative journey, right? Think of it as basically you want to just learn how to handle that feedback, and then know that it just comes down to, again, trusting yourself and your abilities to figure this out. And this is another one that I think people kind of misinterpret, but just being selfish. Like, this is your life. You have to focus on your mental health, your own self-care, and your mental and emotional happiness as well. That's an important part, and that's your responsibility. That's not other people's responsibility, but just know that whatever you're doing in that process, you have to take time, and you have to focus on that ability to really develop those skills, right? It's just kind of your life, and you really need to live it on your terms and really focus on what you want to accomplish, right? And that last part is just kind of what we've been kind of working towards this entire journey, which is that champion mindset and kind of being that champion in your life, which goes back to, being that hero in the movie of your life, right? Like, what are you doing in your life that's moving you in that direction? What are you doing that is actually moving you forward? And that ultimately comes down to just showing up and doing the actual work, right? It comes down to just, you have to outwork people, you have to come to work. It's just, none of this is going to do anything if you don't do any work. Which brings me kind of to the takeaway here. I think it's an Edison quote, but it's, we often miss opportunity because it comes dressed in overalls and looks like work. So essentially, another way to say this is that it's easy to look sharp when you haven't done any work, right? And this is the one thing I think people misinterpret about what hard work looks like and what success looks like. Success is not all pretty. It's not like really glamorous. I think it's one of the misnomers of what people think about when you think about success. It looks like the worn down pencil that hasn't been sharpened in a while, right? That's what success looks like. I mean, think about when you're in the middle of a workout and you're trying to get through that extra rep, you're trying to push a little bit harder. It's rough, like it's not easy, but that's what the work looks like, and that's ultimately what it takes to get to that next level. All right, so you can see that, as we've been going through this journey, we've talked a lot about this champion mindset and what this lifestyle looks like, right? We've talked about kind of challenging the status quo, getting off that hamster wheel of that normal craziness of just doing routines and not moving anywhere. We talked about kind of accepting those challenges, mastering the skills that you need, and prioritizing the positive, and incorporating that new. And now we're into that owning your success and then learning how to deal with that next level, right? So you can see kind of on this map here, we've moved from kind of that hamster wheel of just kind of making decisions and kind of not moving anywhere. We've kind of raised that level of ambition and we've taken action. Now we're moving more into that champion lifestyle, away from just chasing random things and really onto that path of what we want to accomplish in our lives, right? And we're almost to that end of that journey. We're getting through those steps, right? So just kind of week 7, quick recap here, is that, when you're talking about learning how to move into that next level of success, when you're starting to achieve success, you got to surround yourself with people and the things that you want to be around, right? So surround yourself with who you want to be. Think about kind of your vibe attracts your tribe. So stop attracting people that are not moving you in the right direction. You got to think about who it is and what it is you're trying to accomplish in this life, right? A lot of people don't think this way, and just learning how to be around more people like this will actually really elevate you and kind of bring you up to that next level. When you start achieving those levels of success, you're going to be held to a lot higher standard. So it requires that you actually give something back, and it's not just about you on this process. When you get to that next level, it no longer becomes about you, it becomes about what you're creating and that contribution, that level of what you're giving back. Okay? And then obviously, you got to do the work. There's no way around it. If you don't do the work, nothing's going to happen. So just keep in mind that this process requires work, and there's no one has ever achieved any level of success without working. It just hasn't happened. And this brings me to kind of 6 secrets of success. This is a famous speech that Arnold gave at, I think, a USC graduation. I'll post the transcript from this and you can kind of go a little bit deeper into it. But there's basically 6 main takeaways here. And it kind of comes down to trusting yourself, and that goes back to what you really want and who you want to become. The next level is kind of learning how to break the rules. A lot of times we have so many rules, and we're not really comfortable with stepping outside of the box and thinking differently. And any level of success requires thinking differently and breaking that status quo and those levels of rules that we were used to. Right? Obviously, failure is a process, right? It's part of the process of success, and you have to learn that you have to make those decisions, and ultimately how you course correct and what you learn from them is going to move you in that proper direction. Right? Again, there's going to be haters on that journey, so you have to learn how to ignore them, build that thicker skin, and just learn how to deal with them in that process. They're going to try to discourage you, but keep moving forward and keep raising that standard and learning how to deal with them on that process will ultimately help you really refocus on your own journey, because there might be something that they're saying that might be right, or they just might be trying to drag you down. So how you react to that is important. You got to work a lot. You got to grind it out. You have to remember, it's about those 3 things: about either you're practicing, you're performing or you're recovering from the performance. Those are really the three things in your life as you're moving through this journey. And that performance and that practice can look different depending on what that journey looks like, but it's really that simple. If you're running a business, it's working on your business, recovering from the business, and then just practicing for whatever you're trying to launch, right? And then the last thing is you have to give something back. Anytime you achieve that level of success, it requires you to think about what you're giving to that community, what you're creating, and it's not just about you at that point. All right, cool. So that is our week 7. All right, cool.